Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada. My name is Sikhi Mahiti disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Took Diksha from Srila Prabhupada in Chicago, well, Evanston, Illinois, but called Chicago Temple, in July 1975. Joined the movement in November of 1974, and that was shortly after my 19th birthday. So, anyway, Prabhu's asking me to say something, so I don't know. We'll just go with the flow here. I guess maybe, what motivated me to become a devotee. My background was, of course, African American, I guess as they say, and wasn't a whole lot of many people from that community coming into the movement, because America at the time, you need to realize, was just coming out of a segregated society, mainly based on whites and blacks. So a lot of distrust between those groups. But still, I can remember growing up, my family was my mother was very liberal. We didn't grow up with these ideas of that was going on in that way, I guess, with the segregation. So, but as I got older, I think most people I think everybody goes through this question of, who am I, where do I come from? So that was always a big thing in my head. And my brother and I were constantly looking for answers to those questions. Family, my mother was Christian background, Baptist Christian, I guess. Take us to church, but wasn't satisfying, nor did I want to follow it because it didn't make any sense. I think the big question I was always asking is, why is God hiding from us? If He exists, why can't we see Him? So. But anyway, over time, I can remember my brother and I would always sit and try to talk about these things. Sometimes we go on the roof of our house and we look at the stars and just start, where does it all end? Where do they come from? Actually, I can really, really clearly remember one night. We were like, I just want to know. Why can't we know? Does anybody know? And at this time, I was in high school. I was probably 16, I think. And my brother had just graduated. He was going to university in Chicago at that time. I was living in Gary, Indiana. And he met the Harinam party on the street. And he got it back to Godhead magazine. But you need to realize at that time, especially in that area of the country, nobody knew anything about Indians or, what to speak of dressing, like how devotees dress. That was considered madness. So when I think about it, I can't believe he approached, well, I could believe, because if I saw them, I would approach them too. But what was considered normal is you don't go near people like that. You stay away from them. So, but anyway, I guess Super Soul is there. He gets the magazine. He comes back home. And I remember on his face, he comes in the room and he's like, you won't believe it. Read this. And he hands me the Back to Godhead magazine. When I finished reading that magazine, that was it. I was convinced. There was nothing else to do. Plus in those days, even to be vegetarian, never heard of such a thing. I wouldn't speak of Hindu or anything like this. You don't eat meat. Never ever heard of it. I don't think there was any health food stores really, or places that sold things like that. So, anyway, I'll make the story short. We tried to follow the principles, as you know, but you can't really do that, I guess, unless, at least we couldn't. And gradually, I went to college. And before that, I got my brother to get more books. I just said, you have to get more books. I don't know where. You get them from somewhere. And they sold Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita in the bookstore in those days, the big one, the Macmillan Gita, and he brought that home, so I used to read that. I think somehow or another he got Beyond Birth and Death from somewhere. What's amazing to me is that somehow or another I didn't think we should go to the temple. But we lived far, it was almost impossible to get there. And we're young, so I don't know. I think if I'd gone back then, I would have moved in for sure. So in between that, finally, I graduated from high school. I was going to go to New York City time I musician, I was going to Juilliard School of Music. And I saw devotees for the first time actually in the airport. And of course, I've seen there in those days they sold books in Dodi and Tilak. Fortunate for me, because when I saw it, I go, oh, it's the man in the book. I can't believe it. I mean, I was like in awe. I just standing there. I remember just looking. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, like looking at a rock star, And this devotee approaches me and he sells me Krishna book. And now in retrospect, he was real nervous. I remember, because I would have bought every book he had, and I was just too much in awe to say anything. And I remember, give me the book, and he said, how much? Give him $5. Give him $5, and he was gone. I just standing there holding the book. I would have went to the temple if he had took some time. But anyway, I got the book, went to New York, visited New York Temple once. It was very far. So I couldn't. I just went one time, almost moved in. After that, I went to Purdue University, signed up at least. But at that, I really wanted to be a devotee, but my mother was pushing me. Oh, you have to finish college, you have to do this, you have to do so many things. And I was like, I just want to be a devotee, because I realized at that point, there's nothing to enjoy in the material world, really. So finally, I did move in November, or Thanksgiving break. I just called the temple on the phone. I was 150 miles from the temple, and I said, I want to be a devotee. What do you have to do? So in those days, they didn't really preach much. The devotee said, okay, come to the temple. I said, okay. He hangs the phone up. Can't you believe that? So I pack my bags, and I go to the temple. So, anyway, that's a lot of little story. I can talk about that all day long. But anyway, we were fortunate enough to come. I'm glad I didn't really, so many reasons not to. Even my mother was, she was really pushing, no, you have to finish college, you have to do this, which is the responsible thing to do. But when you get that conviction, then what can you do? I would have missed Prabhupada if I did what she said. I would have. So I was really lucky to come 74, moved into the temple. And of course at that time, this is at the period when the movement is very much in, how would you say, it's been kind of solidified in our activities. If you talk to the devotees who joined in the 60s, it's a struggle. Where's money? What to do? There's no books. But they had a lot of Prabhupada association, of course. So that's one generation of devotees. A whole different mood if you talk to some of them. Then there's some that came a little bit after that when the book publication was beginning and the temples were getting a little larger. There's more people. Not so much association with Prabhupada because he's traveling a lot. So, matter of fact, if you look at some of those old Vyas Puj books in Atlanta, we have practically all of them. You can see the movement growing through them because in those days they were right the names of the devotees in the temple. So you can see each year the temples are getting bigger, 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 bigger. So I came right when Prabhupada was really pushing. He wanted a book in every house. And the cooperation was you cooperate with the temple authorities. If you wanted to please Prabhupada, that's what you did. And you realize that Prabhupada, it was enjoyable, but it was serious business, Krishna conscious. We're going to spread this movement all over the world, and we don't have time to waste. So don't write letters for Prabhupada, because the devotees here can answer the questions. Why should you waste his time? He's got to finish his books, he's got to do so many things, and he's not here for your enjoyment. You're supposed to serve and cooperate. So it's like the military, really, at least in Chicago, we were really fixed devotees, probably 50, 60 devotees in the temple at that time. Not such a large Indian congregation. And we were distributing about $2,000 of books a day in those days. We had 8 people on the street, and we had probably another 8 or more in the airport. So on the street, we would distribute Back to Godhead magazines. And everybody take a whole case, 200, and you do a whole case. And you had to do that, you wanted to, because not only that, another motivation is you wanted Prabhupada to come to your temple. So he'd always go LA, New York, the really big places. But the other places, he would look at the presidents all writing letters, And they'd always mention, we sold this many books. And probably, well, how could I not go there? They're selling so many books. So therefore, you were always, there was like a weekly, I don't know if it was weekly or monthly, probably, can't remember. But I remember there was a tally you would get regularly. And you check to see how you were against the other temples. So usually Atlanta, Chicago, LA, they were like the really big ones because we had a big airport, bigger city, so you could do more books. So you would always, oh no, why? Good. Atlanta's got more than us? No way, no, we got to beat them because we got to be number one. And you knew Prabhupada was looking at the list too. You knew he was looking at it. And then they put the top 5 names for distributing. So usually I was in that top 5, maybe number 1, 2, or 3, because we would sell books on the intersection, so we had a good spot to do. I could do 200 magazines a day, which is about $100. You get 50 cents a magazine. This is 1974, 75 money. So, 8 devotees like that, that's $800, plus the airport, maybe another 1,000 from the airport. They do at least 20 big books, $5 to $10 each. So 2,000 a day, and we send that money to India. We had our temples old and raggedy, but because really we just wanted the books out, and to sell them, it's not like people really wanted them. You couldn't just, hi, this is Krishna. Would you? People spit in your face, slap you, push you away. They all thought we were madmen. They thought you were crazy, which I could understand growing up. And if you weren't dressed like an American, living like an American, then something was wrong with you. You're supposed to be harassed. That was kind of the way America was in those days. That very open society. So with the speak people, tilak, dhotis, these little thingies, we look like Martians. So we would dress in regular dress and either wear wigs or hats to sell books. And to sell those books, especially on the intersection, you just had to be a little pushy. You couldn't really tell them it was Krishna. So to get them out more, it was like on the intersection, we would just knock on the windows. Because there's a traffic light, it takes about 2 minutes or so before it changes. So as soon as people pull up, you just roll down the window, roll down the window, roll down the. And because their first reaction is to ignore you, so they got to roll it down to try to tell you, I'm not interested. So as soon as they roll it down, you generally take that magazine, I just throw it in the back seat. You throw it because the cars are real big, they can't get to it, and it creates a distraction. So you toss it back there, and what? Give a donation. Come on, for the light turns green. Hurry up, give a donation. And you look at them like they're supposed to do it. You have to be a little pushy. Come on, give a donation. Help out. And what's it all about? You can read about it later. It's in the magazine. But right now, give a donation before the light turns green. Everybody's giving. You get a big little can and you shake your money. They go, okay. And they throw something in there. And then you go to the next car, the next car, the next car. That's how you sold the magazines. Of course, you come back the next day and they're throwing them at you. Are you crazy people? You cheated me. I can't believe it. But the books were going out and devotees were joining. Amazingly. We didn't have any bhakti program or anything. People just joined. I don't know where they came from, You look the next morning, somebody shaved up and trying to chant japa. So Krishna was sending people. So that was kind of the preaching for the books in those days. As a matter of fact, even if you look at the Sankirtan scores that they have, they show going back to, I think, maybe 74, when they started tracking them. To this day, no one, ISKCON as a society has not distributed even half the amount of books we did in 1976. And we were only maybe 4,000 devotees in the whole world compared to what we have now. So you can see how much, of course, most of those are back to guided magazines. But still, it was, the devotees were really just pushing to try to get Prabhupada's attention. That was the whole mood. A lot of people I think what I see now is, we want to, the nature of our souls, we want to feel happy. And we know Krishna consciousness makes you happy. But the real, Krishna consciousness is a very broad term. So the focus, I think, is if you make the focus, let me please the Guru, which is Krishna consciousness. You catch that fever, then you find you really get that happiness you look for. It's not about, am I a gopi? Am I a coward boy? What do I have to do to find those things? And no, just simply trying to please Guru and Gauranga. So Especially, I guess it was very fortunate because Prabhupada was there, so, and you had 100% faith in him. And therefore you felt 100% able, 110% able to surrender. So we distribute books like that, and that was really the move, just trying to catch Prabhupada's favor. Personally, I can remember thinking somehow or another, my goal was I wanted to be Prabhupada's personal servant somehow or another. But, now that Hari Sari and some of these devotees have written their accounts, I know I couldn't have done that service. I was better to sell back to Godhead magazines. So, anyway, I'll give you a few Prabhupada stories. I'm kind of talked out of energy. I've been following Jabhataka Maharaj lately and talking a lot, so I don't know. But what it's like to see Prabhupada, that's another thing. In those days, also Yadabar had produced the Hare Krishna People. I don't know if you've seen that. It's on DVD. You should see it. Gives you a good synopsis of what the movement was like in those days. So we would see that. We would show that practically almost every Sunday for the guests. It was on a reel. We didn't know DVDs in those days. And you would see Prabhupada in the video. And you've read his books. Of course, at that time, I think only second canto was out, maybe third. So we didn't have a whole lot of books, but like we have nowadays. And then finally, Srila Prabhupada's coming to Chicago. I'm going to see him for the first time, which is, you can only imagine, you're going to see the pure devotee. And what was unique, I think, of that is to see someone who doesn't have a false ego. And, what I mean by that is normally like when you interact with people respond, you have to respond accordingly to, depending on the culture, like say in America. People say there's 100 people greeting you at the airport. You're going to smile, right? You have to. That's just, you can't, because you're in the modes of nature, you have to react that way. Or you may artificially try to be a little humble and like, oh, I'm not worthy of this. Or so many different reactions. But there's a typical reaction that is generated when those things go on. Srila Prabhupada, on the other hand, when he came to the airport, he didn't do those things. It was stunning to see him when there's probably 100 devotees in the airport chanting. There's TV cameras. There's newspaper reports. There's so many people there. And he's coming through this wall of people. And he's not doing any of those things. It's not that he's indifferent. It's not that he's overjoyed. He's just Prabhupada. I don't know what else. And you can see everyone's reaction to it, to see someone like that. Especially with those policemen, because what I remember about the policemen, they would harass us so much. I mean, I was telling Prabhu a little earlier how they would beat us sometimes, and punches in the ribs, and screw your eyes with their thumbs, and all kinds of things they would do, just to try to make us stop coming into the airport or distributing the books on the street, which were illegal, matter of fact, And the day Prabhupada's coming, I remember they're standing around, and they're just, you can see they're in such an angry mood and upset. And devotees, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. 100 devotees chanting arti, umbrellas, chamras, conch shells, flower petals, just like, karmis, they don't know what's going on. What is it? They've never seen anything like this before. Nobody get greeted like that, not even the president. I mean, a lot of people, president comes, everybody's kind of, oh, Mr. President. But not, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, So I remember all sudden, in those days, you go right to the terminal, and the door opens, and Prabhupada's coming out. And of course, everybody hits the ground, the obeisance come up, and I'm really focusing on him because it's the first time seeing him, so it's like, oh wow, he's just wow, he's like a young boy the way he's walking. I remember thinking, why does he have a cane? Because you can see it was like, even though his body is so-called old, it was like youthful. And he comes through the airport, and I'm just watching. And the first thing I catch is all of a sudden those same policemen are all like this. Now they're serving. They're like, stand back, pushing people out the way. No, let him through. And they're trying to help Prabhupada get through. And they're walking, being very attentive to their duty all of a sudden, Just changed them. Immediately they change. It's really fascinating to see the effect of that pure devotee. So this was Prabhupada's potency. And I'd say nothing. He didn't waste time. So quick, right to the cart, talked to a few reporters, Boom, gone. And then to the temple, basis to the deities, just sit down, get the class, and he's, he's off. It wasn't like, sitting around, oh, hi, how are you? Haven't seen you in a long time. What are you doing? You're doing, oh, okay, right. Hey, Hare Krishna. No, nothing at all. It was all business. All Krishna's business. Such a serious and at the same time not serious. I don't know how to explain. Well, you see the videos. He's always like that. Always, don't waste a second. So, and therefore we're all like that too. Because, you want his grace. You just emulate him. Another unique thing too back then is, of course, I think it's similar to the situation in the movement now. Not a whole lot of gurus in ISKCON nowadays. I think more local people are starting to take up the service. But generally it's just a handful. So maybe you only see your guru once a year. And maybe people feel like, oh, my guru doesn't talk to me. I don't get any association. He doesn't give me anything direct. Well, you don't really need that. You serve ISKCON. We did the same thing back in 1975. At the most we could do, there'd be a long queue of people waiting just to fan Prabhupada for a couple minutes while he's giving class. And people are like, come on, then before the class gets over, I won't get a turn too. And then you're lucky to get it because you're real close so you can see better, And that's it. There's no morning walk, there's no going to the darshan, because that was for just a handful of really big shots that got to do those things. The rest of us were, wash the pots, do this, go sell books, go. But you were just waiting that hopefully as I mature, maybe I can get a service where I'm closer and I can get more, I guess. But, that wasn't important, really. It really wasn't. Even Prabhupada, he didn't see us. He saw the spiritual master 2 or 3 times. That's it. You see, the most important is to catch that mood of pleasing him. So, even like to get Prabhupada Maha. When I saw him in Chicago, I saw him in Detroit. In Detroit, we're lucky because he handed some cookies out, so we got that. But you didn't see the Maha, which I can only assume because there's so many sannyasis, which I probably would have done too. I'm taking that Maha, and by the time they finish with it, there's no more left, What are you going to do? You're not going to get any. So, by 1977, I was going to get my Brahmin initiation. I could have probably got it earlier, but I wanted to go to India. I planned on it, and I thought I wanted to get it from Prabhupada too, directly, so that he put the thread on and he'd say the mantra right into your ear. Because even those days too, a lot of initiations were just done by the temple president, and when they had the Brahmin, they would play a tape and you would hear it, and the temple president would put the thread on to show you how to chant. So I calculated, I'm going to go to India, it's going to be auspicious because it's my airport, Prabhupada. I was like, oh wow, let me do it. So the only kink was, it wasn't really my turn to go. And the president talked to him about it. He says, you can go, but you have to get the money yourself. Which didn't mean you go out and collect it, because that money all went for the temple. So I called my mother, who was really totally against me being a devotee at one point, to the point where she even wrote me a letter and said, I will commit suicide if you do not leave this temple. And, being the irresponsible American, I said, well, she's not that nutty. Can you imagine? Anyway, by that time, I write her a letter. I want to go to India because I want to get Diksha for my guru, this and that, and I need $1,500. She goes, okay. She gave me the money. Her heart even changed. She visited the temple once. It changed her immediately. She wouldn't agree, she didn't say, but I could tell. So I got that money, I got to go to India. And one unique thing about that trip to India, this was going to Calcutta. And in Calcutta at the airport, Calcutta airport could not accommodate international flights at that before 1977. So they had just extended the runway. And the first international flight, 747, that landed Calcutta, was this plane with all ISKCON devotees. Rameshwar Swami at the time, somehow or another, caught wind of this, and he made the arrangement with Air India so that when that plane landed for the first time in Calcutta, it was all ISKCON devotees. Can you imagine such a thing? The entire 747. This plane started its journey in Los Angeles, and it stopped in Chicago where we were. So by the time we got on, I would say maybe 30% of the plane was devotees. And I'm talking, these are Tilak, Brahmacharis, Saris, you got your bead bags, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Because, we always wanted the karmis to hear Krishna. And the karmis, of course, they didn't like us in those days. They really didn't like us. So you can feel this tension on the plane. Right? I think we're sitting in our seat. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And they're trying to be annoying. They're looking, they can't take it, We get to New York, more karmis get off, and more devotees get on. Now the plane's about half. When it lands in London, all the karmis get off, and it's entirely all devotees at that time. So this flight from London to Calcutta, nothing but devotees. I'll never forget, it was one of the sweetest memories I have of this. You can imagine, all the little airline stewardess, they just sat down. That was the end of it. And we just, it was kirtan in the front, kirtan in the back, devotees upstairs, down, just, even at one point they're dancing and jumping so much the pilot has to make an announcement, stop dancing, you can't jump on the plane. So, and this plane lands in Calcutta like this too, full of devotees, so it was very, very exciting. But anyway, the story about the prasad is, finally I calculated that, before the prasadam, I also want to have a darshan. So I knew in those days, Mayapur nobody was there. It was just this kind pretty much. Maybe a few Gaudiya Math. Roads, not like nowadays. You can't get down. There was nobody. There's no shops, no nothing. So when we arrived, the long building was probably a little bit finished. And Radha Madhava's temple was, I think that's the Chakra building now. There's only those two buildings. Maybe the Prasad Hall way down there. The rest are chickpea fields. So I was calculating, I said, okay, when I get there, I'm going to go straight to Prabhupada's room because I know everybody's too busy. So let me go right away so I can see Prabhupada. So as soon as the bus, I ran, I said, where's Prabhupada's room? Finally I find it, I go upstairs. And there's a sannyasi standing outside guarding the door. And I tell him, I said, I want to see Srila Prabhupada. And he tells me, well, you have to come back for darshan. And I said, I'm a little Sikhi Mahiti. I'm not going to get in that darshan. There's no way I can get in that darshan. I'm like, man, I want to see, why can't I see Prabhupada? I'm just thinking. And I'm looking at the building. I said, there must be a back door because of the way it's constructed. So I kind of nonchalantly walked along that when I go around to the back, and the door is wide open. And Srila Prabhupada is sitting there behind his desk. So I just sit in the doorway. I don't go in. Because I didn't go in. I didn't want to disturb. I know you're not supposed to disturb him. So I sit in the doorway. And I'm really awesome. Just as I'm close to this camera, and I'm just looking at Prabhupada. And he's speaking with some Bengali gentlemen who were there in pants and shirt. Of course, they're speaking in Bengali. And Prabhupada's sitting up with his leg, sort of like this. And you could see he was sick. Because this is the beginning of, he's about to leave this planet. And Bhakti Tirtha, who was Ganesham Brahmachari at the time, saw me sitting in the door. He had done enough service to the point where he could do that personal service for Prabhupada. So he was in the room. So when he sees me, he tells me, well, come on in. I said, wow, I couldn't believe I go in. And I sit way in the back because I don't want to disturb anything. I just sit back and I'm chanting softly and I'm just, I say, oh, thank you, Krishna. I finally get my desire fulfilled. So these gentlemen get up to leave. And, I'm just watching as they're walking, chanting. They go to the door. And the sannyasi opens the door and he sees me sitting inside. I never forget, I look at him, he looks at me and he's like, and I'm like, So I turn, I look at Prabhupada. I just look at Prabhupada, I'm like, please, Krishna, don't kick me out. Let me stay a little longer. I don't want to leave. I'm not disturbing anybody. Just let me stay, And I hear the door close. And it's just me and Prabhupada in the room. And he sits back, his legs like this, sort of, and he's got his hands like this. And his eyes are closed. And it looks like he's resting to me. I don't know if he's resting or if he's in samadhi. Who knows? He's just... And I'm just chanting japa, And then different devotees, big, senior devotees were coming in and out of the room. And Prabhupada's talking to them. I mean, very grave conversations, because in America, every time you see him, he's always, kind of grave, but still a little more. But in Mayapur, he was really just, so everybody's kind of, they leave, another one come back, and finally, I think the darshan was beginning, so devotees were just sitting there. And Prabhupada's talking. This is probably over a period of an hour or two, speaking very gravely. I can't remember the subject. And until this traveling party, there was a traveling party of women from New Vrindavan who would do collecting. They were really big. So it wasn't just Radha Damodar, there were ladies doing this too, but everybody thought it was Radha Damodar. These women too, sleeping in gas stations, taking a bath at the gas station, eating what you could, and just selling books. And I remember the door opening, and these girls kind of poked their head in, but there's no room for them. And so they're about to close, and Prabhupada sees them. Then he lit up immediately, just like, pow! He just turned a whole another joyful mood. He's like, oh, let them in. Come, sit. And he brings them in, and now he's just like, the whole room changed. He just started laughing and joking, and he's so happy, So it shows by service. He wasn't a sentimental person, I've been in that room probably an hour or two. I never saw him look at me. Maybe he did, but he didn't say anything to me. Nothing. My service really didn't equal the service these other devotees were doing. You know what I mean? So, anyway, I saw they were rejecting people from coming in, so I kind of went out the back door so that there'd be room for somebody else to come, because I'd been there for a while. And, matter of fact, many, many years later, I talked to Brahmananda about this, because after a while, I started thinking, I was in that room with Prabhupada, and I said, what? He never said anything to me. I felt so bad. I was such a rascal. I couldn't even get him to say, anything to me or acknowledge me. I was feeling kind of, like, man, I'm such a fallen rascal. And he told me, he says, "You in that room how long?" He said, "You'd be happy he didn't kick you out." He said he didn't like devotees just sitting around doing nothing. I go, wow, okay, I never thought about it like that. And then we were discussing a little more, and he says, well, I think really probably what happened because Bhakti Tirtha, at that time, he was going into Russia. He was one of the few who could get in because he had Ivy League college credentials. And he's, sneaking around selling books and doing all these things. So Prabhupada was very pleased with him. And he saw him let me in. I think that's why he didn't put me out, because of Bhakti Tirtha. So, basins to Maharaj for arranging that one little nectar thing I wanted. So the next thing now was prasadam I wanted. I wanted some Prabhupada Maha. Outside of that cookie, I never got some prasadam off his plate. I know what the room is now. And in those days, you had to take prasadam at that pavilion that was way down there. I don't think anybody goes down there now. It's where they give, if the mass of people come, you can buy like a little 10 rupee thing and you can sit there and eat. So, in those days, Mayapur was poor. They didn't have any money. Maybe you get the deities have a piece of burfi like this, and they cut it into the 7 pieces, and that's what they had all day. That's how poor it was. So what to speak of the devotees prasadam? Buffalo yogurt, flat rice about that big, maybe some eggplant, something or another, It was like, man, it was austere. And that was it. You couldn't buy maha. There was I don't remember being able to buy any maha or anything. You ate that and that was it. There was nothing else, So I took a chance. I said, I want to get Prabhupada's maha. Because I'm in that room taking prasad. I said, I don't see any sannyasis here. I said, I know where they are. They're up there eating Prabhupada's maha, and we're down here. We just get this. This is not fair. I want some Prabhupada maha, and I don't care. I'm going to get some. So the next day they served prasadam, I didn't go. I went to Prabhupada's room. And now the door is closed, of course. So I just sit outside the room, and I'm sitting there chanting and waiting, and just, if I mess up, I probably don't get any maha, Anyway, eventually, 3 ladies, they come with 3 trays. I see them walking up, and they go in Prabhupada's room. Like, okay, I'm in the right place. Not just wait. Eventually, they come back, and they come out with those trays. And I kind of, nonchalantly act like I might, I let them go a little bit, and then I follow to see where they're going. And they go down to the kitchen, I guess. And they lay those trays outside. All that maha's just sitting there, Prabhupada's maha. So I just start, I try to eat it all up. But the problem is that in those days, nobody really knew how to cook. We didn't have Bengali cooking. And this was Bengali prasad, which I never had before. So it was like, bitter melon, which I never tasted. I remember biting something. I was like, oh my God, how do you eat this? You bite this one, it's flaming hot. Oh, put some sweet rice on it. Everything was kind of really hard to chew. But you could see things that he had bit, So for about 2 or 3 days, I would eat Prabhupada's maha every day. I was like, man, I can't believe I'm getting Prabhupada's maha. On the 3rd day, I believe it was, they take the pot, they take everything in the kitchen. And I was kind of shocked because normally they would put it outside. Then they come out with a big clay pot, huge thing. And you looked in, and all that prasad had been stirred up. I mean, they put it in a blender. You can tell what was puri, what was dal, what was rice. I was like, hey, where's Prabhupada's maha? They said it's in that pot. I said, what did you do to it? Prabhupada said the devotee shouldn't pick over it. So he said, stir it up like that and put it in the pot and let him eat it like that. And I was like, man, I couldn't believe it. Because the big thing was I couldn't eat everything. I wasn't accustomed to it. So you take a clump and you take a little clump of it and you try to chew it. You're like, shows you how fallen I was, Today I eat that whole pot, in the pot. Then I just, took a little bit and I didn't come back anymore. So fallen, couldn't appreciate Prabhupada's maha. But anyway, at least I got to get Prabhupada's maha. I got a little darshan. Oh, another unique thing I did too, I got to put my head on Prabhupada's feet too. Which, it was kind of it was a little bit of offense. I shouldn't have done it, but when he came to Chicago, he came down for darshan into the temple room. And I'm standing there. I think I was just right in the right spot. I'm looking right at Prabhupada coming with the entourage. And I couldn't believe it. I was so blissed out. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there. He was walking with Prabhupada. So I guess he kind of he saw my enthusiasm, so he gave me Prabhupada's chudder and cane to hold. So I got to get behind Prabhupada with all the devotees, and I'm standing there with that chudder and cane as he goes to the deities to pay his obeisances. And at one point, where he's in front of the Gaurnitai's altar, which is the first altar, then Kishore, then Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra. So this voice all of a sudden comes to my head. You should touch Prabhupada's feet. I'm like, no way I'm going to touch Prabhupada's feet. He's in front of the deities. You can't touch. We're not, someone made it the announcement, do not touch Prabhupada's feet, because he says they don't want him to take any more karmas making him sick. So we were told not to also. But I was, I'm not going to touch his feet. No way. And the voice kept saying, no, you better touch his feet. If you don't touch his feet, you're never going to get this chance again. Ever. You better do it. Like, no, I'm not going to do it. So anyway, the devotees pay their obeisances, and there's so many people I can't pay my obeisances, so I'm standing there. And his voice kind of says, see, look, if you touch his feet, nobody's going to see you anyway. They're paying their obeisances. I go, okay, fine, I'm going to touch his feet at the next altar. So he goes to the next altar, and he bows down, and he's barefoot too, and his feet are out flat like that. So I go down with my head, and I just gently, I don't maul him, I just kind of touch him lightly like that, and I come up. Soft, like a baby's foot, right? And I come up, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj saw me touch his feet. He was so mad, he looked at me with those fiery eyes. He took that chudder and cane away from me. I was like, but anyway, at least I got to put my head on Prabhupada's feet. So, there's a couple of things. Anyway, there's some other things, but, nothing really extraordinary. Saw him in Detroit, some other places. But in closing, I guess, realization is that, two perfections are Sadhan Siddhi, Kripa Siddhi. Sadhan Siddhi is following these rules and regulations. Much easier getting the mercy of the Guru, the Kripa. And that's just by trying to dedicate your life to pleasing him. So I hope maybe this motivates us to dedicate ourselves to Guru and Gauranga and somehow or another do something to spread Krishna consciousness while we're down here. So Hare Krishna.